Hi everybody, the Mature Simmer here. So this is a Tower Simulator 3 how-to video. This is definitely going to be an advanced how-to video. I've recently started working through generating custom schedules and figuring out how to do that from real schedules, and I think I've got a really good way to do it. It's the best way I can come up with so far. Always open to people making other suggestions. There's probably some automation here and there that can be put in, but in the end, a lot of things just require some manual work and you just keeping track of things. So I wish I could say this was simple. There are some tools out there that will take like the existing schedule file and just create a new random file from it. What I wanted was to be able to take real world flights and run an airport. I'm going to use Nashville for the example here because I want to create a schedule for that I may be using on a series on the channel here. But I've done probably 4 or 5 different schedules at this point, so what you're seeing is kind of the trial and error and learning as I went through and how I go ahead and do things. So first let's start with tools. What do you want to make sure you have, or what am I going to be using? Notepad or something like it. Notepad, I think it comes with Windows. I assume everyone should have it. This is the simplest thing, and it's a way to do quick basic edits or fixes if you need to. Microsoft Excel. I still think it's better to edit the initial files and certainly to work with the flight aware data within Excel. Obviously, you're going to need the Tower Simulator game, and you're going to need some general understanding of things. I'm going to walk you through as much as possible so that you don't have to hunt and peck for things, and that this will be kind of a one-stop video that you can refer to as you delve into this and want to create these type of things for yourself or for others. All right, so one of the first things you're going to need in understanding a schedule is going into File Explorer in Windows and getting yourself set up. I've actually gone ahead and I created an entire copy of my Tower Simulator directory in case I needed to do some things. That's probably not fully necessary. I also have a constantly running cloud backup system, so I've been able to recover from some early problems that way. In the event that you want to do things, make a copy of whatever file you're going to edit until you feel comfortable with what you're doing. I have installed on my D drive is where I have the game installed. So you'll go into the Tower Simulator 3 directory, and then you're going to find the structure here. I'm likely going to do other how-to videos because one of the other things that I've worked with is creating new career scenarios. So I'm able to do that. Again, there's some tools that can help you that people have released on the Discord. I'm not sure that they're fully necessary, and frankly, they only go so far. And I always find that I have manually edited things here, but you'll see the jobs file is where your career information resides. And you can see I made myself a backup before I started working with it, just in case I needed to go ahead and do something and something didn't work. So the airports directory is where you need to go. It also helps to have knowledge of other things, but I'll get into that as I go along. But all the airports available in the game are here. I've talked about this in another how-to video about how to save custom schedules and use them and put them in your system and install them. You're going to have all the directories for all the base airports or for all the airports available. So I don't own Atlanta, for example, but there's still a directory here for it. So that eventually, if you go do it, you'll go through and work through that. So I've gone ahead, I've made custom schedules recently for TIST, for the new Burbank airport using real world data. And as I said, now I'm going to go into Nashville, which is KBNA. Within the airport, you're then going to find something similar to this. What you're really worried about is your databases. So you're going to normally see default, and if you've got world traffic and world color, you're going to see these energies design folders as well. This folder is a custom schedule that I downloaded from somewhere and used. So that is not a schedule I've created. but you should expect to see, you'll certainly have default. Depending on if you've bought the other real world pieces, you may or may not have this folder, and frankly I don't know, maybe this folder also exists even if you haven't bought world traffic and world color, but and it's waiting for you to do so, similar to the airport folders. All I can speak from is my experience. So the first thing you need to do is you need to get into a website that can give you flight data. Most people tend to use Flight Aware. That is what I'm going to use in this case. There are others. You can probably take the information you're going to get here and apply it to work with other data if you want to do it, but you're going to need an understanding of what's happening. But this is simply going to cover using Flight Aware. So when you come into Flight Aware, you just need to go to the main search grid up here, and you don't need to have an account because again it's quite expensive if you want an official account, and we're not doing that type of commercial work. We're pulling data once in a while, because even with this process that I think is a nice way to do it, this is likely going to take you hours to do properly. So you're going to put in your airport and it's going to search, and here we go, Nashville, and you click on it. So it's going to recenter the map, which is interesting but not that important. And obviously this is kind of real-time information and so forth. You want to scroll down and you want to get to this area that says arrivals and departures, and it honestly doesn't matter which one you work with first. Just pick one and then go ahead and pick more next to it. So after digging around for a bit, I've learned something, and I'm going to keep this in the video and just leave it there so that you can share in the learning I had. There is no way to get historical flight data without paying significant fees for them to give you historical data. So just so you have an idea of what you're looking at, if you wanted certain data, and this is all flight operations for Nashville, and then it'll send a report. If I want 1 month, but you can't pick a date that you want. So it's just data from today back. So if I wanted June 30th of this year and it's now December, I would need 6 months, which means it would cost me $1,568. Well, I'd love to have the flight data from that day. It's not worth that much money to me. So once you hit more, you're going to get to this screen, and this is basically live data. So you can see I'm kind of, you can see the time up here. It's 1:52 Eastern that I'm recording this, and so there basically have not been any arrivals, or at least arrivals that FlightAware is reporting in Nashville for about the last hour, which seems strange. Could happen, I suppose. I'm guessing maybe the data just isn't updated. So I did refresh the screen. I got one more flight. So I'm thinking it takes a little bit maybe to process here. So you're not going to get real-time data, but no one's really usually looking for real-time data. What you need to create in Tower Simulator 3 is a 24-hour file if you want a whole day. The simplest way I've determined to do that is simply to go ahead and just go from midnight to midnight, and that way you have that information, and so that way you know you have that day for whatever you're looking at. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit next 40 down here because I don't need all of the flights from today, but I'm likely not able to go. I don't know that I can go beyond a day or two here. You can see currently displaying flights 240 of 280. So the screen's going to give you 40 flights. So because I don't really have a preference, there's nothing this week, for example, that happened. And what tends to happen in some cases is, if you really look, and if you've ever done business travel or anything, any travel that is repetitive, the same flight number is available on the same day and so forth. So while the week may change a little bit, there are usually flights that go every day, and they may have the same flight number. So there's always, say, a 8 a.m., this 6:43 a.m. flight that arrived here from Milwaukee Mitchell in Wisconsin. Again, is it Southwest 1453 the next day? I don't know. I guess let's be curious. Let's learn. All right, so here we've now moved back to Friday, and you can see close to that same time, 6:46 a.m. today, Southwest 1453 came from Mitchell and arrived at Nashville. So the reality, honestly, is if you do a schedule for an airport, you're going to get some variation, but it's likely going to be the general aviation. You know, there might be some flights. The nice thing here with FlightAware is what you're pulling here is the actual arrivals and actual departures. So if flights got canceled, if things got delayed, so you know, if you're deciding, hey, I want to model some weather event that happens, obviously you're going to have to pull the data close to it and at least have it available to you. You know, you could, you know, save the spreadsheet that I'm going to show you and just save the data and then work on it later if you can't work on it at the time. The point being, go ahead and pick a day. You'll have what you need, and it will pretty much give you coverage for what you need to work with. So I'm going to start from last night at midnight, because the order this gives you, I mean, you can change the sequence, but it doesn't matter. The game's smart enough to read a file. You know, it's a computer. It can do what it needs to and get things in order. We're pulling this information. You're just highlighting what's in the grid. Control C on the keyboard. If you've used your keys, you could probably right click. I think that's likely to cause you a problem. I'm old school. I use keyboard shortcuts for a lot of things. And then you're just going into a blank Excel spreadsheet, and you can choose to save this data, as I said, if you want or not, but just literally Control V, paste it. So now you've got 40 flights. Well, that's for segment, because 34, because we had some Friday flights. You'll just go back. So Alt-Tab is typically what you do. Get you back to the screen. You know, you'll find it amongst all your screens. I'm not going to teach you how to use your computer here. And then you are literally going through screen by screen until you get to midnight of Thursday. So let's see what we end up on the arrivals. All right, similarly, on the other side, you are looking here then to stop pulling data, the last arrival that shows up here. So 12:02 a.m. on Thursday, Southwest flight from Denver. And so we have 395 arrivals. Now, you're not required to do a whole day. You can do whatever you want. So if you're just you just want to do this and you don't want to take all the time to work through all these things, don't feel you have to do all of this, that it's this gargantuan effort. But again, the way I do it, I've got formulas saved. I've got a lot of things that I can use. You'll see that going through the volume of data really isn't that bad. But now we repeat the process for whatever we didn't do, in this case, departures. So if you started with departures, now do arrivals. And when you go to departures, you're going to get the same thing. Now, I've already got the first screen full of departures for today because it's into the day and it's a busy airport. And you'll notice the columns are different. You know, there's estimated arrival. So basically, this is the column you're using to determine when you're starting. And like any airport, you know, Nashville, after doesn't start. It's not running all night long. But you can see, you know, there's departures at 5 in the morning, but really, before that, there isn't. So midnight to 5 a.m. kind of tends to be what happens. So we've got Thursday at 11:57 p.m. was the last departure, and we're now going to do the same thing. So Control C, hop over to your Excel. Control V, and you'll notice there are more columns in the departures than there are arrivals. That's okay. You just need to be aware of that and then take that into account when you work through your process. So you'll notice sometimes you're going to get, when you get the next 40, because it updated, depending how fast you go and how large it is, you may get the same flight. So if you do that, obviously just delete it. And it's honestly probably pretty rare. I just happened to notice, because the flight number was unique, because I don't know what CNS is. It may not be valid. It may not be something we keep eventually. But in any event, 793 total flights between arrivals and departures. All right, and then because of extra width and so forth, you know, that the departures have an extra column, and just because this is what I selected, there's nothing magic about what I'm suggesting. I'm giving you my process so that if you want to recreate it and you want to find it, and then obviously tweak it for yourself, I start doing work in column I. Okay, and I'm going to put various things across here. But what that means is then column O and P are going to be my airport locations that are going to determine what I'm going to be using. So as far as, you know, where they're coming from and so forth. And there's two ways to do this. I actually ended up doing all the steps I'm going to show after this before, and then realized, ooh, I now have a problem in getting arrivals and departures because things are mixed up. And so I created some formulas that fix the problem, so I'm going to use those anyway for pieces here. Or, well, I'll share those at the end in case you have a problem. But this is, in my opinion, a simpler way to do this. So you have to obviously know what you've got on top here and what you did, you know, so what you did first and then what you did second. So we did arrivals and then we did departures. So if this is the from airport and this is the to airport, obviously for arrivals, the to airport is KBNA. So I can now take this and go down to the almost 400 that I have. Again, I'm looking for where column F suddenly shows up. There it is. So I go down here and just Control V. And now I have the arrival airport of Nashville for all my arrivals. And I don't have to generate it via a formula. And again, you can hit End and down arrow, and that'll take you down to the first blank of a column if you've not done that in Excel. And now this is the, again, from airport. So for departures, it's coming from the airport that you're generating the schedule for. So this is where KBNA goes now. And again, I do the same thing going down to almost 800. So I'm just using Shift and page down. In case, again, you don't know what the keystrokes are, you can drag with the mouse, but I find that that's more difficult. So there you can go, 397 rows. So we have 397 departures. And actually 398 because it doesn't include that. So there's a few more departures than there are arrivals on this particular day that we've pulled. But at this point, now I've got all that data in there. And you can choose to go ahead and pull the information, and I'm going to go ahead and do that so that I don't have to worry about that. I have a Word document where I have saved flight-aware formulas that I use to convert this. I'm going to paste this detail down in the description of this video, so if you want these formulas or want to look at them or just want to copy them out or whatever, I think that will let you do that. But what I want to do in this case is I want to grab the airport. So that is my formula. And so now you can paste the formula here, and you can see it's kind of set to work just the way I've designed it. So that's why I know it's column O, because the formula I saved then looks, it knows that the airport information is there. So again, I'm going to give you enough Excel to be dangerous to get done what you're doing in case you've not used formulas and don't understand how they work. So what you're looking at here is it is taking text, it is looking at the left side of the text, so starting with Brookings, and then it's going to go all the way to the right in this cell, C1, and it's going to then look back 5, which means it's going to get K, B, KX in the parentheses, but I don't want the parentheses, so that's why the left exists. So you kind of solve from the inside out. So it's going to grab the last 5 characters with right C1 5, and then by taking that result and running it through the left formula and then just taking the leftmost 4 letters, since the airports, the way Flight Aware provides them, which is the ICAO code, I believe, are 4 digits, that's what you want. And then again, you can simply go down. So a trick here, you can go over here and down, and you can see it went to the blank, and then we're there, and you just paste, and now you have all of the originating airports, which will be used on your strips if you use them. And I don't know that it really affects how things come in and out, but all these airports have longitude and latitude, as they do obviously in real life, and FlightAware will use them as it needs to. I think for arrivals, they're already kind of, once they're in the path, they'd be coming in different areas that we can't see on the scope. So I've not normally seen as much variation there, but that gives you that information. And then you get down here, and you can again now just copy this. You could go back to your formula if you want. Obviously this is now wrong because it's now referring to the wrong column, because now I've moved over one. So you do have to come back in here and fix that, but it's going to do literally the same thing. It's just now one column, and then I'm going to page down because the end doesn't work that way in this case because I don't have anything for it to stop on. So there you go. There's a likelihood that you're going to have problem data in here, and you can search for it if you want, or you can just let errors occur and then kind of go through an iterative process of loading your schedule into the game and then just dealing with the errors, which is what I tend to do once you get beyond a really small schedule. So when I did TIST, for example, there was just a total of 101 flights in total with arrivals and departures. Here we've got 800. With 101, I could kind of do it, and scan, but you've got to really allow for a little bit of assistance and automation otherwise. So this is the way I suggest you do it, which is basically pull your data in, get your to and from airports set over in a column, and I'm suggesting you do it there because when you're pasting this into your schedule CSV, this will help with the sequencing, and then you don't have to pick and choose columns in a different order. There's nothing that says you can't just throw those over here, but then they're not going to be in the sequence that you're ultimately going to need them in most schedule files. So now you're going to go here to column I, and then what we're going to do is we need to know the airline code. So you're going to get the airline formula, put it in here, and that's simply left from the first column, and we're grabbing the first 3. And again, now we know we're down at 795, so or 793, you do that, and so you're going to start to see stuff like this. So this is a general aviation aircraft. We're going to deal with those later, so for now we're just getting the information. What we're doing is we're populating all the information before we're then going to sort the data. I also do suggest, because I think you'd be okay, because I don't think Excel, I'm checking this live, yeah, this is showing up as general. It's not treating this as a date and time, but what I have found, you have to be very, very careful if you reopen a file in Excel, because anything that is just going to say 1026, which is what ultimately we're going to have here eventually, if you reopen it, it's going to put it in as a date and a time, and then it's not text anymore, and then for a CSV it doesn't work. So I tend to not save this data, but there's no reason I think you shouldn't be able to do that as you go along. Alright, so in column J, we're going to grab the flight number. So you can see Now it knows it's 938. Now this formula is a little bit complicated. Inside out to some degree. So inside, length of A1. So what it's doing is it's looking at the length of here. So this is 6 characters, but you can see in the Southwest case here, this is 7. You know, this is 6. You're going to have others. The one I deleted before was like CNS 5 or something, so it was 4. Flight, airline and flight number concatenation that you have in A1 is going to vary in length. So you need a formula that can deal with that. And so basically what you're doing is you're saying, okay, this is 6 minus 3, because I always want 3. So that way, you know, if it's 4 minus 3, then it knows, you know, I need 1, for example. But you're basically taking the full length and then saying, you know, I want 3, and then that's where I'm going to start from. So like in the example, if it's 3 characters and then 1, you know, a single number for the flight. So again, CNS 5. It's going to be 4 minus 3. It's going to be 1. I just need the 5 in that case. And then it's again using A1, and it's going from the right that many characters as we've calculated. So we're going to do the same thing. And now we've got flight numbers. And again, general aviation, we've got some problems, but we deal with that when we're dealing with creating the general aviation file. Alright, and then initially I had pulled the airport code over here into column K. So the way things are built, I'm just going to skip that. So again, you could shift everything I'm showing you over a column. But I had done that and then realized, I don't have, you know, KB and A when I had KB, KX. And it would be a problem to fix that later. It'll make more sense in a little bit, so just go with me here right now. So in column L, we're going to have the time. So you can see 22:26. That's what I need within Tower Simulator 3. I need the 24-hour code. So it's 10 p.m. So again, the formula here, a little bit complicated. But basically, what it's doing is it's determining, is it a PM? If it is, it's going to add 12 hours, which for a full day, because in Excel, times are decimal numbers, basically. They're format of that. So if I want to add 12 hours, I add 0.5 to whatever value I have. And if it's AM, I don't need to add anything. I just take the time as it is. So if this was 10:26 AM, I need a 0. If it's 10:26 p.m., I need 0.5. All right, and so this is basically looking at the middle of D1, and it's starting, you know, at the 10th character, because again, it's always 3 for the digit, and the hours and so forth are the same. So this would be a challenge if FlightAware didn't include the leading zeros as it should in the reporting. This would be really difficult to do, the formula. I can't even imagine what a mess it would be. And then we're just grabbing 2 characters. So this is literally grabbing PM and basically doing an if statement. Does it say PM? If it does, make it 0.5. Otherwise, make it 0. And then it's taking what is called the time value, which is again of D1, and it's taking 10:26, so it's starting at the 5th character and going 5 characters over, so including the colon. And so that's where it gets 10:26, and then the value for 10, you know, and it's turning that into a time value, so it's a number in the back end that Excel deals with. It's not a text field, and then it adds plus 0.5 if it needs to make it PM. And then it's going to turn this into a text value, which is what I need in a CSV file. So that's what the outer text is. And the format I want is hour, minute. So once again, you're wanting to do this for now your arrivals. So if you've looked at a schedule file, and so again, you can see here, so yes, I apologize. So I want to delete that, and I want to actually put this here, for arrivals. And then again, what I'm looking at here though is I want E1 because that is the time I care about. This is when it arrived, so that's why I went up to this point. And so what I noticed, in case you didn't understand what happened there, I'm like, wait, there's Wednesdays, and then I'm like, oh, I'm using the wrong column. So this is where you still need to pay attention to what you're doing. It's not kind of this robotic thing. You're going to have to be able to focus. And just like anything, the more you do it, the faster it becomes. I've gone way too far. So I'm looking for the cutoff there. So if you've never seen a schedule file, is what I was going to say, in the game, the arrival times are in one column, the departure times are in another. So you only need one value within the system. And then here you can just paste the same formula. And once again, in this case, it works because this is my departure time. So if you remember, I'm here on departures from Nashville. The first column is the one I'm working with. The other one's estimated arrival and the arrival of, when it got to its destination on the other end. So once again, once you have it in column L, get to the bottom, paste it in, and you now have all the times for every flight. And right now, because of how we pulled them off, they're in sequence, kind of in reverse sequence. If you want to pull them a different way, you can do things. So you can see again, we're going to be looking for these type of things later. But, here we've got an issue, and that is basically because it didn't arrive. So what likely occurred here is this flight probably didn't show up. So if you see something, go ahead and take care of it. But in most cases, we're going to catch those later, or we're just, the software is going to catch it when it tells us it can't read a value. All right, so at this point, you've done all the pre-work that you need to do before you move things. So when you sort in Excel, it's going to move everything in the row. So if I didn't do this, it would be much more challenging if I didn't do this before the sort to do things. And, previously, the last time I did this, again, I had used column K to just use this formula and get that information out, and then realized I had a problem later, and then, went ahead and put things in this way. But that works fine. So at this point, this is a good example. If you click with the hyperlink, you're going to get taken right into the Flight Aware page, which you don't want. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to highlight all the way over to column P, because I need all my data. And I now need to go all the way down. And again, once it goes by, the page down kind of flies much faster. So that's how I suddenly get to 1200 and don't realize I'm that far. So you've got to be paying attention there. And this is where the undo command can be your friend in case you make a mistake. But you'll go over here to sort and filter, do a custom sort. You don't have headers in this case, so if that's checked, turn off my data has headers. And you are sorting on column A, which is the airline flight number combination. And you're going to hit OK. And you now have flights sorted. And so you can start to see a little bit of the challenge is now I've got arrivals and departures mixed together because I've got information set up that way because flight numbers obviously will intersperse that way. With the way Tower Simulator 3 operates, one of the things it does not like is duplicate flight numbers. So that is the next thing that we're going to look for. And so in this case, because we now have column K open where we didn't in the instructions I was starting from here, you could use column K or N. I'm going to use column K in this case, but you're going to use the check for duplicate formula that I have down in the description for this. The first cell can't be, or the first row can't be duplicated with anything. So you're starting this as opposed to the, at the top, you're starting one down. But you're going to go here, and this works because you can see 72136 is the same. Now we're going to leave this, but I'm going to make a decision a little differently here, but I'm going to go down. So this is now where you're starting to work through the files, and you can see, like, you've got to be aware of what this is telling you. So it's literally comparing this to the row ahead and saying, is it a duplicate? If it is, it's giving you an X. If not, it's not. All four of these are duplicates of each other. So you just have to notice that, but that's where the sorting is going to help you. Now in this case, I don't have a plane, but more importantly, like, I've not seen this until I pulled this data before, I don't have a carrier. So these are just numbers for something. I don't know what they are, and there's probably not a way for me to figure it out. So we're going to go ahead in this case, and we're just going to delete these. And because you could see that was a KBNA and KBNA, so it was something local. Sometimes you've got helicopters, but usually they're still going to, like, tell us it's a helicopter. In that case, it didn't. And so, you know, maybe that's the traffic chopper or something taking on, you know, taking off and landing at various times for the morning and afternoon rush hour or something. I don't know, but I'm not worried about it, so I get rid of it. Well, I made a mistake here, so fix this formula, or at least my intent is that I'll fix this formula before I give it to you, because yes, the formula I copied was 94 to 93, so it just happened that the 94th and 93rd row happened to be duplicates, so it looked like it was working. But then I noticed 1065 and 1076 are not the same. Why is it telling me it's a duplicate? Alright, so now what I'd suggest you do is you deal with duplicates. So, because again, if you click on the A column, you can mistakenly go into the flight. So the habit I've developed is click on the X and then move over. And all it needs is a unique number. So I just add 1 by default. Now again, it's possible there would have been an American Airlines 101 already. In that case, I would have had to do something different. So maybe you'd make it 1099. Just make sure it's unique. This is the benefit of it them being sorted, that you know this information right away. And now you can see, you know, we don't see any flag here. So there's one there. So we'll go make it 57. And then we can see there's another one here. Whoops. So make it 66, and so on. So you go through and you handle all your duplicates. So I'll pop back when I have kind of a unique situation, at least that I've run into in Burbank. Maybe it won't happen here in Nashville, but if it does, I'll show you. If it doesn't, I'll just explain it when I come back. Alright, so here's a perfect example. We've got Envoy 3774 that's a duplicate. Normally, I'd go ahead and make it 3775, but I can see below that I already have that. So I'm just going to go the other way. And then 3775 is a duplicate. I can go to just 6. So I'm just always trying to make the smallest edit I can. I think in reality, you know, these are obviously real schedules, so those flight numbers are quote-unquote duplicated, but the game doesn't handle that. It can't deal with that. So, you know, I think what ends up happening here is, you know, the flight came in at 10 a.m., 3774 came in from Miami at 10 a.m. Then it turns around and departs about an hour later at 11:04 a.m. to go back to Miami, and it maintains the same flight number. So I don't know if it's just a shuttle back and forth, you know, and therefore the airlines aren't required to change the number. It can just maintain that same flight. But the game won't let you do that. If you try to load it, it'll tell you that it's got duplicate flight numbers. So you have to eliminate duplicates. And I choose to do it this way because otherwise you don't have that leg to air traffic control. Like you wouldn't have a plane coming in and then a plane leaving. Now, the reality is, because I don't think the game's intelligent enough to know like this would be the same plane because it would be the same flight number. You know, the flight that leaves at 11:04 may not be the one that came in at 10:02. It doesn't really matter. You just need to manage it. The game's not sophisticated enough to track equipment and so forth. So, you know, as far as the specific plane and how you would do that, and we don't have the data in Flight Aware to know that it's the same plane either, but just logically we can understand that's what happened here. But yeah, just change the number up, down, whatever it is, but instead of like creating completely random numbers, I just usually change the last number on these. And then when you do general aviation, you've got letters at the end, so you can play with the letters if you want, but I usually leave the letters alone and then go just change the last digit of the number in between. So I'm going to keep getting this done, and I'll see you at the end. All right, so here's another example. We've got JCM 615 4 times. Again, my gut is telling me this is probably something we're going to end up deleting, but maybe not. So I don't try to do that research now. I just continue to do the task I'm doing, but I need 4 different flight numbers, because now when I change this to 6, obviously the duplicate goes away, but that's because it's not 615, it's only checking up and down, it's not checking the whole list. So that's where you need to be aware of what's happening. And so then that's what I do, is I just make them 15, 16, 17, 18 if I have enough room. If not, I adjust accordingly. All right, so this was another example. I've gone ahead and already fixed it, but I'll explain what I did. So there were basically 2 of the same flights. There was a JSX 570, a JSX 570, Big Stripe 570, 570, 571, 571, 572, 572, 573, 573. So basically 2 duplicates, and again, you can see with columns L and M, again, it's likely the same flight just going back and forth between the 2 airports, and and it just maintains the same flight number in real life. But because I couldn't change the 570 to 571 because I already had one, you need to just come up with a way that you're going to make them unique. So instead I just basically decreased everything, and so made the 570 69, then I made the 571 68, 67, 66. So you just need to come up with a way to eliminate the duplicates. General aviation, again, because of the way the game works, it just creates a situation that can't be helped. These are tail numbers on a plane. Obviously, you're not suddenly repainting the tail number, but it's the only way we can get it to work in the game. So again, I took these 918 and just went down because I had 4 or 5 of these that happened throughout the day. And again, if you're looking at it, it's probably running back and forth. These are flights that are here, so they're basically going up and landing, going up and landing. So maybe it's a flight instructor or something. I'm not really sure how those would work in air traffic. All right, so now we've gotten the data in, we've sorted to find duplicates, we've gotten duplicates. So now, that means obviously, column K that we used, it's still got a formula in there. Doesn't really matter. We're not going to be copying across in a group. Most important thing now is just keeping the number of rows in line once we go to the schedule. But before we go to the base schedule, we've got one area we need to work on first. So we're finally going to go back here to the folder. So what I suggest and what I always do is I copy one into another. So because I'm using real traffic, I usually will take the energies one and Control C and then Control V. It renames it copy, and then I can do something KBNA, and then I've just been doing 120723. That way I can see, and it's just a 6-digit date, and then that will work. And so this way, because I copied it, all the airlines are going to be the carriers that can come in. All the airports is one of the more important ones. This is going to be the airports that it goes to and from. Those things need to exist. So to begin with, you're always, with what I'm doing with kind of the immersive full schedule, trying to capture everything I possibly can. You're going to be dealing with the general aviation, which is GA, and you're going to be dealing with the schedule, which is the main schedule. So I suggest in this case that these, you right click and I'm going to open with Excel. I've noticed variations in some cases with these columns, and so what I tend to do is I tend to insert a good amount, let's say 94. We'll see if that's enough, and then move it down. But that way I have original data to kind of reference so that I can just make sure that I'm doing it correctly. Then I go back to where I pasted the schedule. So I'm back here in book 1, and then the general aviation is the November ones, meaning they start with N. That's what I mean by November. And so this is again where we don't have a carrier and a number. You can tell right away, like, that's the first one. And now if I go to the bottom, we're going to see how many we need, because it's not all N's, because again, new is a normal one. So we have 88. So we're going to copy this, go back to general aviation. I've got more than 88. So then I can right click here, and again I'm pasting values. That's what I'm doing every time. So now I've got all of my call signs there. Now this is the trick with general aviation, is you've got to put in the wording, or the call sign say, which I think then the voice AI will use that to go ahead and read that back to you. Now this one has 5. I've seen some that are typed in Fife. I always just use the numbers and it seems to work. Same thing, Niner I've seen honestly with NYNER, and this is now showing it with an I. So I don't know, Nashville I think is a newer airport, so maybe they've done it differently. But I've also done schedules only for TIST and Burbank, which are both free airports in game, so maybe if someone else made it, they do it a little bit different. But right now we're going to skip B, we're just going to make it wide, and then we've got the airplane type, which we know about. So, we're going back here, and so now we know we need to go down, but the airplane type is this column here. You can see where it's highlighted with the moving dash lines. I'm going to copy, pop back over, paste values. Now we've got the planes. Then these are the from and to airports. So this is now where you can go here and pull these columns together to speed things up a little bit. Take advantage of the fact that they are used in sequence sometimes in schedules. So we're going to paste those in. And again, sometimes I check to just make sure that I'm lining up and that somehow I haven't missed. So then again, we have arrival and departure. So in this case, now in hindsight, what I may have wanted to do is put the columns in reverse order. So lesson learned. I don't know that it's worth redoing the video for it, but sorry, I'm moving up and down here, not paying attention that it's to my left. And so I pasted values, and if I go to format cell right now, you can see they're general. The key is what you're looking for is that there are leading zeros. And so a fix you can make either here or in the other file. The formula does, see, and you can see now I put 1203, it changed it to a time. So what I want to do is undo that, and I want to go make this a text field so I can put an apostrophe in front But this is the issue. Anytime you edit any of these, so this is noon. Anytime you edit any of these, it tries to be smart and help you, but in this case it causes an issue. So you're just going to see those zeros for anything in the noon hour. So you'll just go through and take care of that at that point. Now this gets to be a problem later because we're going to have a lot of flights in the general window, so I'm probably going to work through seeing if I could get a formula to consistently add that. It can be done, I just haven't thought through the math. And then again, these are the departure times, so we're going to paste the values, and we're just again quickly looking for anything that's leaving in the noon hour. So there's one here. You know, and you can start to see, like, this is just the general aviation, this is not everything else. So we've got a 1244, a 1250, like there's definitely clumps together. Oh, and there's one more here. So the problem is that would be basically 12:43 a.m. if we didn't fix it. So it's not that it wouldn't work, but just be aware, like if you don't clean that up, you're going to have flights that would be coming in around lunchtime. All right, and then at this point, what I do is take anything that is standard and additional and go ahead and include it so that we have the same type of thing and the likelihood of it working as expected works. So this is, you know, stop and go, touch and go, low approach, and a color field. Again, some files are the same, some are not. You know, there's nothing in the approach column, but it needs to be there. So the next thing then in general administration is you need to get the call sign pieces in there. So I turn on caps lock, and once again, you'll look at the file. You know, these do use the letters. I mean, there are some things here like steel jet and so forth, select jet, that could become a challenge. And so this is a great example of an airport that could be very challenging for editing if you're trying to keep everything, because it's possible things like gamma jet won't work in the schedule, but there's no reason you need them in here. I think the only reason would be if they truly are general aviation and you want to capture them that way. I think that impacts the terminals that they can go to be completely focused. So I guess let's see then, because what in theory we should be doing is I should be grabbing any gamma jets, any dark horse, any peg jets. And the nice thing is, because they're alphabetical, I can do this search relatively quickly. So there's no gamma jet there. We go from Delta to DPJ. So this again is another one. You can see it's got a value now that I've come across it. I'm going to delete, or actually no, I'm going to leave this here. I'm going to worry about it in the, well, no, actually I can go ahead and delete it here, because then I just don't move over the garbage into the schedule. And then what ends up happening there is the duplicate checking is an error, so that's showing up as a reference, but you wouldn't be copying that column anyway. But in any event, we don't need them. So in this case, then we can go back to what I was doing, and basically all of these will start with November. So we'll put that in, because you can see any of those do November. Some airports just use the numbers and the letters at the end. So this is why it's good to start with the file from the airport, because you can kind of line things up the way they worked. Now, I've caught something in the airplane. I know that there's only one Gulfstream that works in the game, and this is where having familiarity with what is there is important. So I've also created an airplane sheet for myself, which is the 100 and whatever it is, 132 plane types. So the way you can do this is there's an airplane file up at the Tower Simulator 3 root directory. those are all the airplanes that are supported with models in the game. So if you don't have a model, then obviously you can't render it. But this is the only Gulfstream that exists. So whenever I see anything like this, I go ahead and replace it, because I know those aren't real planes. And again, you're going to over time understand. So again, I think this SF50, yeah, so see there's an SF34, and so because it's likely a Saab, so what you can do, so we'll hop into part of the fixing here. So you can take that SF50 and then you can go over here and do airplane. I have the caps lock down. Airplane SF50. You can enter that, and then it's going to tell you that it's a Cirrus Vision SF50. So let's see if there's a Cirrus. There are not. You know, but again, you've got an idea of what it looks like, so you could try to match it up. You could then search this FS30. So we can put this in, say, well, they don't quite look the same, but again, it's close enough in this case. So it just depends how detailed you want to be. I'm going to go ahead and make it the SF34. I see, whoops. All right, let me just type it. I think I mixed up my keys. I think I copied. So you could just let this file process at some point, but you're going to get all these errors. You're going to be in here fixing it anyway. So as you get familiar with planes and realize these don't look legit, or if you just want to spot check this real quick, the key is, like, you could just make these all the same model and just make them a bunch, you know, all Cessnas and be done. But then you're not going to have any variation of planes in the game when you're enjoying the visuals in the game. And so it took me a little bit of time to make that list. Now the other thing I can tell you right now, like, there's a problem here. This isn't an airport, so it's probably worth taking a look at the original data. So for 350 BB, if I now go here, 350 BB, it's coming from General DeWitt, Spain, M01. So I'm going to leave this in here because it's going to show us, but then I go airport code M01. So there you go, General DeWitt, Spain Airport. That's an actual airport. We're going to need that in a little bit. So at this point, we've kind of gotten done cleaning up those things, but then we need to basically go through and get all of these typed in. So again, we'll put caps lock back on. 119er Juliet, and then this is what it's going to read, and it's going to expect you to say that back. And so you can see, like, this was one that we likely fixed. So in some cases you can just copy, and then you can see, like, hey, you know, this is there. So again, like these here, like if I do this one, I'm just jumping around because I'm going to work on these and not have you watch me do them all. 6 Gamma, oh, I'm sorry, Golf, you know, but then these two are similar, but then that way, instead of retyping all that, you can just go back in and make this 7, whoops, and make this 8, and then those are done. So you can, you know, figure out what works for you, the quickest way to get through it, and that's the biggest thing. So I'm going to get these done, and I'll be back. So I've gotten these done, so all 89 are there. Check the planes already. Normally that would be what I would do next, is check the planes, check any of the airports that jump out right away. But at this point, then we are done, and what we need to do is get rid of anything else that we don't want. So we don't want the original kind of placeholders that were put in, so we're going to delete the rows here. And then just to make sure that there aren't any extraneous pieces of data, I also go and delete some columns. We hadn't done anything over there, but that way everything's good. Then highlight everything that you're including, to highlight all the cells. Change the format to text, so that way There's no numbers, there's nothing strange, everything's coming in at the best it can. And so at this point you just do one last double check, and then to avoid anything, because now we're done with the general aviation, we want to go down to those records, and those records now need to be removed because we've dealt with them. So you're going to highlight whatever the 80 some that we have in here are. You know, there's probably a little bit more because again we got rid of things on the other side. But there we go, down through here, and you're just going to delete the rows, and then that makes this file ready to work with the schedule.csv. So this is an editor's note that I'm inserting in here as I've gone through. So I've been playing with the file a little bit after I made the majority of the how-to video and realized that I was having things that weren't working. So I was looking at these flights, for example, like they would load and they would tell me there weren't the paint scheme available, which would make sense because this is an airline we don't have a livery for because it's not even listed as a real airline. But they never showed up, so I was testing this 1429 flight and it never appeared. The reason it didn't appear is the planes that are used here aren't able to take off or approach a terminal, a major terminal with a gate. So in the general schedule, they're going to terminals that they have no way to approach. So basically, you know, I've got a Cessna and a Beechcraft. These are tiny little aircraft. They can't come up to the main terminal at an airport, and so I think the game then is smart enough to just leave them off. So when you're moving things over, you need to get things here, and then in the schedule, if you didn't pull these out early enough, you just need to make the call sign and the flight come together. And then this is why we saw things in the example where it had like Dark Horse or something, and I was like, oh, I wonder why. This is why you need to do that in general aviation, because otherwise you won't see them at all. And so you might not know that if you weren't looking for them, so I want to make sure you were aware, which is why I've gone ahead and inserted this piece here. So what you need to do is look over here in the airlines that you added, and these are really all small regional carriers for the most part. You know, it's possible Delta Jets, although I think it's just called Delta. But you know, it's all the way up here, so basically all of these got added to the airport. And I've played 8 or 9 hours of the file just to see how things work. And I've never seen any of these, and so I knew that WUP was one, and I'm like, well, let me test this out specifically, and I discovered this problem. So I wanted to include this so that you were aware how to resolve it, but I would encourage you then just go in here and then go back into your schedule, find all these flights, move them to general aviation, and get them fixed up as I'm doing here, so that, you know, you're going to have to do that. So now, you know, and I've got it's what's up 3, 2, 5. So you're, well, not 5. So you're doing the same thing, and then you've got the plane. So again, if I look up here, you've got the plane, you've got the from and to, and then the, you know, whether they're leaving, departing, and then the defaults are, once again, as I said, you've got to append them on here because the general aviation looks for those and the other one does not, so it's not in the schedule. So there's a slightly different setup, but you know, you'd basically then do the same thing here, but it's just because a Cessna can't come up to a main terminal, and so they don't get included. So make sure you do that in your file editing as well, otherwise you're going to have a problem. We'll return now to the regularly scheduled video. And again, we're going to open with Excel, just knowing that we potentially have some problems. So you're again trying to get familiar with the file setup. Most of these I think are common. I don't know that I've seen a whole lot of differences. So we're normally not doing anything out here. I don't know what the text in the special does, other than maybe just allows some notes to exist. But if you want to keep a few records, you can. But the columns are pretty self-explanatory in my viewpoint. So we're going down, and we're doing that, and we are deleting, because we are creating our own schedule. So operators, it says color. That's where it's going to go to the world color database and figure out which plane it's going to paint for you. But then you could have separate call signs. We're just not doing that. All right. So at this point, now it's kind of taking the data and just going ahead here. So we're going to copy this first column, column I, and that is going to be paste value in both of these because we're not doing anything different. So you can see we've got 39 American flights at least coming in. Nashville, at least when I was there, was a Southwest hub. I assume they still are. So I think that's going to be the majority of the flights, and with the errors I had to fix and so forth, or the duplicates, that there was a lot of Southwest. Then we grab the flight number, same thing, paste special, so that it just does the text, and that's it. Or paste values, I should say, not paste special, because special, yeah, it kind of triggered in my head like that doesn't sound right. All right, now the one thing we hadn't moved is the planes. What we can do here now is we can go over to the plane column. So again, paste values. You know, so once again, see, like this could potentially be one right away that you're seeing, but we'll go ahead and we'll paste everything in just to make sure. So now we've got our from and our to airports. Or I'm sorry, yes, because these are times. So these are in sequence here. So we're going to go here, paste that. Now we've got all our airports. And then again, the approach and departure times are reversed. So you just need to keep track of that. So again, just be aware how you create things and what you want to do. I think these can switch sometimes. So I just grab the approach, put them in there. And again, this should, just as a double check, you're coming to Nashville. So anything that says to BNA should have a time in there. So that can give you a quick visual. Yep, I pasted these in the right column. And then we go there. And we should be good. And then the biggest challenge is, you know, finding these 0 zeros. So so that's the first thing I'm going to do, but I know there's a couple that are legitimate, so let me go look on the schedule. Alright, so those are there. So as your check, you'll catch that you did something wrong more than likely, especially at an airport like this. You know, you've got 800 flights. If suddenly you're controlling traffic between noon and 1 and like nothing's happening, that's because you've got a bunch of these 0 zeros in, and then if you ran from midnight to 1 a.m., you'd suddenly have those 34 flights happening at midnight, where instead we really should just have these 2 happening between midnight and 1 a.m. So we know we had a situation where we were missing planes. So here we go. So let's look up CHE. So this is an airline code. So you're looking up airport codes, airplane codes, and airline codes sometimes. Okay, this is an airport code. That's not... Alright, so there does not appear... Okay, Chae flight code. That's just... I'm going to delete these because I'm going to assume these are not... I mean, there's something, but I don't know what they are. And I can't easily find it. So I'd be guessing anyway. Let's look. There were others that were blank. Okay, R72. Again, we're going to delete this. Things just look too weird. It's got TN55. It makes... I'm thinking that's more than likely something like a helicopter or something that showed up. And then SHA, because this looks like it's Shady 32. Do I have Shady? No. That's Shady Airport. That's the airport again. So I don't know what this is. It might be a general aviation thing of some sort that should get potentially moved over. So we've got 696 flights in the general schedule plus the 80 some that we have in general aviation. But at this point, it should be okay. So what I would suggest now, we'll close this so that we can use it. And then I do go into Notepad. Well, I don't actually need to go into Notepad. I just double click this. I want to verify there are leading zeros. So I see 07, 08, because sometimes Excel will strip those out. Again, like now if I reopen it and try to work with it, we're potentially going to have a problem. We're likely going to need to do that because we're probably going to have airplanes that we can't work with. But this is where some of the fun begins. But at this point, you're done editing as far as like you think you're ready, and now the game's going to tell you you're ready. We're ready to bring it into TS3 now. So we may need to work with the airlines file and the airport file. That's usually the only other thing I'll do. And that again is a decision you can make on how accurate you want to maintain the schedule. So I'm going to show you what you can do to then add airlines and add airports that come up as errors. But if you just choose to ignore those, you could go into the schedule and just delete those if you want as well. So let's fire up TS3. It's exciting. Right now we're using these in Quick Play. So we're going to go to Quick Play, we're going to go to Nashville. Per using custom schedules, this is how things would work. You know, I'm going to go ahead and set it to 6 a.m. And then, not that it totally matters, but then like when it starts, you know, it'll do some things, but we're more than likely going to have a bunch of errors we need to work through. So at this point, you've picked the airport database. This is going to give us the liveries, so we do want Nergis. There's no editing or anything we're doing there, nor can we that I'm aware of. So let's see what happens. So normally in my videos, I'm not showing you the loading screen because it does take some time. There's a lot going on, but an error box will come up and it'll start loading a bunch of things, and we can let it go for a while. We might even let it go all the way in. It just depends how late things come up. Usually if it appears before here, sometimes it just crashes. But if it like starts showing up here or says like it can't find liveries for a certain plane. So I did have a problem, for example, in Burbank, that even though Southwest obviously has liveries, the 7 series that I picked wasn't working. So you can see invalid airplane type, and then it just says and more errors. Now we can let this go in the back for a while. C56X happens all the time. You know, so do these Beechcrafts and the 738s. You know, but there's more. I mean, this is just from 201 to 251, so that's just in 50 places, and you can see these are invalid airports. Well, this is airpot, but they're airports, and the key is here, like, we're not moving in the background. So this likely means like we're really stuck. So you have to do the control, you do the Alt Tab and then just hit the X and force a shutdown. So we need to go find the player log. You're going to find your user, and then you're going to go to App Data, Local Low, Field there, Tower Simulator, and you can see here is the player log. And so at this point I usually kind of shrink Notepad down, and you can just start scrolling and just trying to find things. And there isn't much at the beginning, because this is like, and these things that are missing, they're always there. I don't know what the game is doing, but this is like where it's loading the assets, and here is what we're looking for: errors. So invalid airplane type, so B738. So now I go back to my cheat sheet, So I've got a 736 and a 739. So I'm going to go ahead and make these all 737-900s. But so we're going to try to do this in here, because you can do a replace. And so I'm going to do B738, and I'm going to replace it with B739. And we're going to replace all. You know, and the thing is, like, this doesn't tell you how many it's done, but those are replaced. Now we just flip back to the player log and we keep looking. So E75L. And again, if we don't know what that is, it's probably an Embraer, but let me go look. So I'm going to my tab, I have the airplanes on, E75L. And this is just the way I do it. You don't have to do it that way. So it's an Embraer 175. So let's see if that exists. We do have that. So E75L to an E175. And we're going to replace all of those. Got to do it here. We're going to replace all of those. And so we're probably going to see, there they are, 175s. We'll go back to the player log. So yeah, because this does this in Excel too, where the find and replace just kind of hangs over the app. And so whatever window is focused on underneath is what it's working on. So this doesn't change anything. Well, it did here. It changed it in the error log. So see, now it says 175. So you got to be careful what you did. Now we have an unknown airport, KJVL. So this is our first example of fixing an airport. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the airport CSV. Again, we're going to do this within here, and I've put them at the bottom and they seem to work just fine. So if I go back here, KJVL, whoops. All right, so basically it's the 4-digit code, the 3-digit code, the time zone it's in, the country code it's in, the latitude and longitude, and its name. And there we go. It's Lebanon Municipal Airport. So this is also the M54, which I think was one that we had as well. So I'm going to want to also add M54 in there. So I copy the name. I go AirNav's usually one that brings things up pretty well. And then I just right click and paste the name. And then 36.19 and negative 86.32. I'm rounding, because you can see it's 2 decimal points. I'm going to assume it's JVL. I don't know that it really matters on that. And then what I want to do is look. I don't know that KBNA should be in there, because obviously it needs to know the airport for that. So I think it's going to be -4, but I'm not sure. KBNA -6, so wrong direction. -6 and USA. And so you get the idea. Now you understand what I'm doing. I just got to remember the E175 isn't legit, because that's obviously okay. So I just need to go through the rest of these planes and any other airports I find. If I find anything else other than an airport and a plane, I might find a skin problem or something. It's less likely, I would think, but we'll see. But I'll come back at that point if I find that. So the other thing I realized as I've been going through these, so these are all new airports, so this is the last one. The time zone is there, so -6, so that tells you what you need to put in. All right, so the other thing I'm going to go in here is I'm going to go into Tower Simulator and Airplanes and the Nigeris. These are all the airplanes. So I'm going to look at the 739, and yes, this is what I thought. So I'm going to make a change. Let's see. 736 doesn't have it either. Neither does the 735. I'll tell you what I'm looking for in a second. Okay, Southwest. 733. So this is where you then get errors if you change planes, but then the livery doesn't exist. So you can fix an error and create another error. So what I want to do is change the 736s and the 739s now to 733s. Because given how many there are and how low they are down here, I'm almost positive that these are Southwest folks. Alright, the 350, I think we've done all those. Alright, so we've got 3 more airports. And I think these are in GA, so there's the M1. We did KI, KV. I think I said earlier in the video, like, if you edit these and you've gone through this at this level for one, use this as your base to make any other Nashville schedules, because that way all these airports and all this research that you've done will be available to you and you're not doing it again. Alright, so we've gone through and done everything. I'm going to not save the player log. Not that it entirely matters, because it's going to generate a new one when we do this now. So again, going into Nashville, it's going to remember our settings. And now we cross our fingers and hope we got all the errors. And if not, you just kind of keep working through it until, you know, and making your decisions on what you need to do. I think it had to go a couple more pieces on loading before we started to see problems. So I think it was at this point. It gets well into the word of loading, you know, then we're in pretty good shape. Shoot. So see here, it's the airline color not found. So that's the issue. See, now we've given a lot of these other things the 733. It's loading in the background, so at least we've gotten a little bit further. So the game will load here. So with the airline colors, for example, you could ignore those and the planes will they just won't have anything on them. They'll just be white planes. They'll be the right shape. They just won't have any paint. But we don't want to do that. Do I have a problem? I'm missing a comma. And then similarly, I'm also missing a comma. So it couldn't read those as airports. So there's usually something easy to explain things. You know, so the nice thing is it does give you that, and here we go. Here are the colors, airline not found. This is a lot. Usually you don't have this many things. I'm basically going to do the same thing. I'm going to go into the airplanes folder. I'm going to look up what else I can do for the 733, but then the challenge is I have to go into these particular, so let me look at the PJC for example. Well, see, the PJC may not have one, so that's probably a bad one. I'm wondering if in general, because none of these are airlines that like are ringing a bell. I thought there were some American ones, but I'm not seeing that. So we're going to save. And so the benefit of doing this in Notepad now is you're very unlikely to have problems that you'll create in the file. Alright, so what I'm looking for at this point is I just want to see that I have problems with the paint. And if that's all I have, there's nothing I can do about that. I can't add liveries in, and that would be extremely difficult and time consuming. You think we've spent a lot of time here. Because again, this is about 2, 3, maybe 4 hours to get through everything that I've done here. You know, this is a pretty substantial airport, but it's just, it's going through methodically and just making sure you've got everything. Okay, so we've got the unknown airline operator. I'm not sure that we need to worry about that. See, but there's an American and a Delta here. And a United. So I want to fix that, and the LKJ. So what you'll do is, for example, I found the United has 739. So you go into the schedule, and the nice thing is, because they're all alphabetical, what we need to do is find all the 733s and replace them with 739s. And so you do that for the major airlines that you feel you can fix. And this, again, this is definitely getting very nitpicky. Like, I could ignore that. The last piece to get done is the airlines. And so I don't know how important that is, but basically what I will do is I will go in and I'll get those in and add them to this airlines file. And you can see it's just the call letters, the name, so you know you're looking them up. But again, like WP, I couldn't find. So it's like I'm making something up. And so, you know, the call sign is the second thing. So let's see, I don't know if it's just going to read it as whoop. I guess we'll figure out, and then we'll call it Western Union. I don't know. I don't think it says this or anything. I don't know that it shows up anywhere. And then the country. So that's the example of how you update the airlines. But so I'm going to do that and then change the planes, and then we'll try it again. We'll see where we're at. So I'll see you in a bit. All right. So many airlines here. Could never find this one. So I did find this page here. So many things. This is the one I started with. Could never find this, but I did find this page here. I've actually bookmarked it because this is by far the most valuable for finding things rather than just randomly searching. But other than WP, I literally found everybody else that was here. You can see there's some interesting ones: JetRite, JetShare, JetLinks, Poinsett Air. So, you know, some are going to be challenging. Pittsburgh Jet, Foothills, Nashville. Nashville wasn't on the list either, so NAS wasn't there, but it's in Nashville, so I figured maybe it's some new group that doesn't have an official designator yet, but everything else has been found here, and I think this gets me where I need, so it is time to try again. So now I need to go and fix the paint jobs. So one other trick I learned when you're looking for, you know, here I've got American Airlines, a 733. There's no airline color. If you look through a bunch of folders and you can't quickly find it, you can just search for the airline at the top of this folder here with the airlines, and it will find it. And so the 73H looks like what I need to put in there, because that'll be the closest. So it's the B73H, which is a 73 heavy. So it's just a bigger plane. So time to test again. Let's hope. All right, Nashville, 6 a.m. and the loading commences. We'll definitely have a lot less. If there's anything, it's like one or two. There's going to be something with, I think, a VJA. That airline does not have a livery at all in any kind of plane. So, but it's not coming up, at least that I saw, as an airline that is not listed. So it should be okay. Oh, we do have CYC DZR I didn't do. Well, that is interesting. What? Wait a minute. These weren't all coming up. But I wonder, because these are, I think, all the airlines. Okay, so that actually might work, because... So I need to see if I can find CYC DZR. NSH is there. These are the new ones I put in, so they wouldn't have liveries. Alright, so there we go. So, like Dozer that I just did, DZR, that's up there. As I said, BJA, I knew I couldn't find one. So those are just textures. So at this point then, we are in excellent shape. You can see it's 5:08 a.m. I moved it to 5 a.m. just to do something different, because I know there are some flights. I've taken flights out of Nashville at that time just to get somewhere quickly. and be there in time and not have to fly out the night before, for example. But at this point, as the airport runs in the background,
Nashville ground.
we don't have anything
Southwest
going.
2185 with information Delta, requesting push and start.
So you can see the game works, the schedule works. Now, again, there could be things you end up finding out as you play along with your schedule. For example, I talked about maybe making the mistake of not having things work. I've got some ideas on the formula, so what I'm probably going to do, I'm going to try to tweak that, and so you're going to have more updated information in the description of this video than you had in the video. So just keep that in mind. Hopefully you've gotten here to the end. So if I do make any tweaks to the formulas, trust that if they look different, that there's a reason there. Yeah, I'm not actually playing, so there's no arrival runway, but at this point I'm sure that probably means there was some plane that was coming in or that was going to come in, and now it doesn't know what to do. So but now it has a runway, and so I would imagine then shortly things might show up on the scope as planes start to come in. But yeah, the time things, other things might happen, but for the most part at this point, as long as you're not getting loading errors, you're in good shape. So, what you can do then is, if you've got an airport and you want to work with a more realistic schedule, you've now got the tools here in working through this video to build everything up. And more importantly, it's not just the schedule, it's the entire airport operation. So you could say some people ignore general aviation because obviously there's the challenge of having to put in the call signs and all that. Again, we had 80 plus of those here at Nashville. It took me a while, but because you're not really making a lot of changes to these things over time, and it's not like you have to do this every week because the flights for the most part are the same. So I could see, for example, maybe as we get closer to the Christmas holidays, it might be like, I want to know what Christmas travel looks like, and I want a Christmas schedule, so that if I want to work a holiday schedule, and similarly, maybe I do the day before Thanksgiving or something at some airport I'm really enjoying, or if I happen to catch the news soon enough. The problem was, I think that article about June 30th didn't show up till August, so once again it would be far too late to go back from FlightAware and get that information. So there is some limitations. I know there's other sources out there. Maybe over time I'll find another source that lets me go back historically. I was looking at another one that someone had recommended, but most of the others that let you query, you need to basically write code to do it. And while potentially, I've done development before years and years ago, I'm not looking to do that. There may be someone who has something that'll pull it off, but you need to do it in JSON, and you'd then be working and debugging that, and sure, at that point then you're pulling data, but then more than likely you're still having to finesse it into the schedule, just as I did here. It just gives you the option of getting some historical data, and I don't know if it goes perpetually or just for a time, so it might only go a month or two, and then you're in this kind of the same boat. A lot of people will then, as I said, they'll play with the schedule, they'll play with general aviation, but the other thing I've showed you here is how to add the airports and how to add the airlines. So the airports are useful here because they'll show up on the strips, and as far as like anything else, and the latitude and longitude and so forth, it just helps for a more realistic flow in and out of the airport. Now, the reality you're going to have with an airport like this, given that we had, as we saw, about 800 flights in total coming in and out of here. Now, yes, that's over a 24-hour period, but we're still likely talking about 40 flights an hour. Maybe you can do that as a solo, but more than likely you can't. None of an airport like this is not manned by one ATC operator. during the middle of the day or during the busy times. You know, here at 5 a.m., sure, there might be one person in the booth. The time is running. We've been talking for 5 minutes. We're going to have Southwest get mad at us soon, but you know, those things will happen. But once you get into the middle of the day where you've got flights landing and flights needing to depart, you're going to need multiplayer. But the game also allows you in solo to go ahead and winnow it back. So I found for busy airports, if I go to 50% traffic, that's manageable individually, and you know, maybe you could play around and do something a little higher, do 70%, 80%, and decide what works for you. But the point is, if you do what I did here, you've got a full schedule so that you have all the options available to you. If you've got any questions, absolutely drop them down below. I will be more than happy to provide answers to the best of my ability. I'm certainly not going to claim to be an expert, but one of the reasons I wanted to put this video together is I've not seen material to the level of detail I like out there. I think people do just really cursory information, and I wanted to give something thorough that someone could look at and actually be successful at this, rather than you trying to still have to figure out and fill in the gaps amongst the explanation. And if I haven't done a great job with that, absolutely let me know, and I'll certainly strive to do better next time whenever I put anything else out.
Nashville ground, American 2787 with information echo, requesting push and start.
Keep in mind, things appear at gates randomly to some degree. You know, they're assigned to terminals. So here in Nashville, there's 2 concourses, C and D, that are pretty much Southwest exclusive, and everybody else will go somewhere else. But so, you know, if you start this and do it at 5 a.m., you wouldn't necessarily have these 2 planes at the same gates. They'd probably be similar, but they're not going to be exactly the same. But they will show up at the time that we have, because that is how it works. It's reading through the timetable. But I'm hoping you've enjoyed this in-depth advanced how-to of how to go ahead and really give yourself an immersive experience using real schedules within your airport to get them set up so that you can use them. I'm going to have videos on the channel that are going to actually play through things that I've done with schedules. As I said, I've kind of got some ideas of things I may want to try and so forth, but this is really just a how-to video. So if you've enjoyed it, if you haven't dropped a like, please consider doing that, and if you are not a subscriber to the channel, please consider that as well. And with that, I will see you next time.